Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to welcome you to the conference, The Limits of Artificial Intelligence and the Risks of Digital Superintelligence. When the European Parliament adopted the Artificial Intelligence Act 2 years ago, we achieved a historical breakthrough. With the first legal framework of this kind, we laid the foundations for the safe, ethical and responsible integration of AI into society. Yet we all recognize that this is only the beginning of a long process, and the pace of the digital transition is not ours to set. What may sound abstract today could tomorrow become the driving force behind new discoveries, services and products, but also new risks. We face pressing questions about the limits of control and the potential creation of superintelligent systems that surpass human capabilities. These systems could deliver revolutionary solutions in medicine, education, transportation and sustainable development, while also driving innovation and economic growth, but they could equally expose us to greater vulnerabilities. Our greater challenge is to strike the right balance, wise and productive. The most advanced forms of AI already surpass the Turing test, from machine learning algorithms to self-learning neural networks. These systems are becoming increasingly sophisticated, taking on tasks once thought to belong exclusively to the human mind. Today, artificial intelligence refers not only to existing methods like machine learning and large language models, but also to future far more powerful technologies, artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. The unpredictability and the possibility that they could match and exceed human intelligence or bring about the so-called technological singularity raise profound questions. If we dismiss this as a distant possibility, we risk losing the very control on which ethical standards and social acceptance depend. And we see that with AI, the future comes at us faster than expected. As a lawyer, I understand how critical it is to determine who is responsible for the actions of intelligent machines. Too often we attribute flaws in the AI to the careless, unintentional misuse of technology by humans. But what if those actions are no longer within the developer's control? Can we afford to drift into a scenario of digital anarchy? We will only find answers if we have the courage to ask difficult questions. There is no room for fear nor for blind optimism. We must take a pragmatic and responsible approach, establishing clear rules and ethical guidelines to ensure the new technologies are deployed safely. This issue must remain firmly on the agenda of the European institutions and Europe. It must show that technological progress and protection of human values can go hand in hand. We must make sure that AI does not become a new Tower of Babel, a symbol of boundless ambition with catastrophic consequences. It is no consequence, it's not coincidence that some compare the risks of increasingly complex systems to global threats such as pandemics and nuclear war. We are already debating AI-powered drones with the potential to reshape military conflict, while breaches in cybersecurity have exposed the vulnerabilities of our critical infrastructure. Generative technologies now allow the creation of images, videos, audio recordings and news articles nearly indistinguishable from reality. They are capable of manipulating public opinion. History teaches us that technological development has no stop button. No stop button. Digital transformation is irreversible, but if we can maintain control and act proactively rather than always reacting, we can bring about a revolutionary leap in areas essential to human well-being, security, and even longevity. This is our goal when we speak in Europe about innovation, ensuring opportunities for funding, creating an environment for successful partnerships, and building a legal framework that protects human rights and democratic values. I'm pleased that we will continue this discussion together with the Bulgarian Commissioner, Ekaterina Zakhareva. I do not expect us to settle the topic of this conference today, but I am confident that each participant will contribute ideas, expertise, and critical insight. Consider this forum an invitation to a continuing dialogue, because we need to build a safer and more sustainable digital future. Now, I have the pleasure to give the floor to Professor Andreeva from the Varna University of Economics. I thank her for having accepted to moderate this conference. You have the floor, Professor Andreeva. I would like to thank you.
It is a pleasure to speak after Mr. Radev. My talk today is entitled Thoughts on Education, Humanism and Artificial Intelligence. I will start with a game. Yes, a game, even though this is a conference. I believe that games lie at the root of development, or at least this will be the theory that I will be arguing for today. So, move 37. That cannot be a move made by a human. I have never seen anything so beautiful from another human being. These words were spoken by Lee Sedol in 2016. The computer AlphaGo played 5 games against Lee Sedol, the South Korean Go game master. In that match, the result was 4-1 in favor of the computer. This went down in history as Move 37. Lee Sedol lost to the machine, and since then artificial intelligence has become more skillful in the game. But this victory of artificial intelligence is seen as a real breakthrough which can lead to huge changes in our world. The South Korean genius Lee Sedol no longer plays. He says, I know I have no chance. Lee Sedol is a genius, but only with people. The developers studied Move 37 and continued to develop the AI algorithm. In 2017, they launched a new updated AI to play against professionals online. Maybe you will ask, what was the result? 60 wins for AI, 0 losses and 1 draw, following a loss of connection with one of the players. The people in future will not be able to distinguish art created by humans and art created by AI. What do you think Bach and Mozart would feel about it? Leonardo da Vinci or Rembrandt? This is something that we need to think about. Of course, the next question that arises is, can a machine be actually intelligent? Is it capable of thinking and acting like a human being? The development of AI is often seen as a process of gradual improvement. with each new stage leading to new levels of capabilities of technologies. We are currently at the first two defined stages, but the next possible stages in the development of AI could include concepts which will be able to transform even more radically our understanding on technologies. This is the topic of the intelligence of AI and the risks it is fraught with. How does AI change? It changes every second, and it becomes more and more a part of our lives. There are numerous examples: digital assistants in our phones, Siri, Alexa of Amazon, or the browsers, the most widespread application of AI, the new encyclopedias, which our students and all young people use every minute. The social networks, which are widely used for communication between people, make use of AI. Maybe you think that we control the process in social networks, but this is not really so. It is social networks that control our thinking. Online shopping. I'm sure that all of you have used this: transport, navigation, editing texts, which we as academic people write, and many other applications. One of the biggest problems in developing AI is ethics and morality. Will we be able, by means of legal norms, to regulate the ethical limits? I don't know whether my introductory words have made you think at least a little about these issues. You can answer this for yourselves. My role was to stimulate the game called reality, in which each one of us participates along with AI. We perform different roles. Right now, we are participants in a conference. 2 hours later, we will be performing other roles as friends, members of a family, talking to children. Maybe what I said sounded a bit frightening, because this is the new reality. But this was not my aim. My aim was to provoke you before we enter the more serious part of the conference. And after the introductory words by Mr. Radev and myself, we are moving to the first panel: the limits of artificial intelligence, what it can do and what it can do. And now I give the floor to Professor Kalinkhalino, Flotilla Admiral.
Thank you, Associate Professor Radev, Professor Andreeva, dear colleagues, dear guests. I have the pleasure, very briefly, to present some aspects of a problem which I think concerns us all, namely what AI can and cannot do. I would like to go back in time to December 2022, when I was formulating a task for the management of projects to my students. I asked them to do specific things. 4 months later, in March and April, I was told that everything is ready. I start reading, and right from the start, I discovered that what my students have given me far surpassed what I expected. Everything was different. And as a teacher, I first thought that it is about plagiarism. but there was no plagiarism, there was no such thing. Then I thought that probably these are better students than usual. What has changed? Actually, 4 months after the appearance of AI in the public area, this happened. And since that time, we got used to artificial intelligence, and it is now part of our life. And that is why I would like to dwell on the question what the AI can and cannot do. I shall speak about something which concerns my next slide. We usually ask ourselves what the intellect can do, how to work with big data. The AI works with a large number of data, and it replaces us in dealing with very complex tasks. And something else, it generates content. You can set a subject, and the AI writes something which is very acceptable, very reasonable. And in this way, AI helps us make decisions. It is very useful when we want to compare two products, find out which product is better. AI gives us categorical answers and provides information. A colleague came to me 2 years after he was habilitated, and he said, I'm ready for the next stage in my development. That was very quick. And that is because AI chat has helped him very much. This is what AI can do, but let us see what it cannot do. First of all, AI is very different from us. What we do when we approach problems, we approach humans, is very different. Sometimes I play with AI. I use puzzles, but it is very difficult. AI finds it very difficult, and it cannot resolve the puzzles I set for it. As if emotions as part of this process are it's very difficult because it cannot distinguish between good and bad, because moral and immoral. In Facebook there are interesting clips showing heads of state in various situations. These clips show us the elegance of human movement achieved after thousands of years of evolution. So AI has no imagination. Sometimes it draws conclusions, but does not provide the arguments how it has arrived at this conclusion. Therefore, we know that AI is not a goal in itself. We need to use it as an assistant to our work. And many of my colleagues, academics, should know this. And this slide shows what can help us integrate AI in education, because this is a process which is absolutely inevitable. First, when we prepare the syllabi, we can find what are the weak points of our educational projects, what should be emphasized, in what direction we should use. Here are the ways it can support, help us edit things, smooth our style, It is an incredible translator, actually, AI. Once I had to help my wife to translate an article into English. It was a couple of pages, but a very specific text. My son saw that I was finding it difficult, and he said, "Let us see what AI can do." In half an hour, we received an absolutely incredible translation. But there are some differences. Instead of structural development, however, the translation said structural growth, which is not the same. So therefore, one has to be careful when using it. Regardless of how structure is developing, this leads to growth. Then, on this slide, I would like to draw your attention to in what way AI can replace some of the things we do. We can introduce this in my next slide. I show that we should adopt a positive critical thinking concerning the capabilities of AI, and we should learn to use it in this way. And last but not least, the challenges which we should address. Is the academic community prepared to work with AI? Is there a danger of trusting AI too much? And I would like to mention something else as well. These are the educational challenges. We should not go too far in trusting AI in our work, because while we know that it can help us, we should not rely blindly on it. And there is also the question of ethical and academic integrity, about plagiarism. And how can we judge how far are the abilities of the student and where the help of the AI begins? And there are also practical challenges. Can it help us refine the things we teach the students? And there are also challenges for the teachers and professors. Educators should be prepared to these challenges. It is no accident that I started with the fact that in 2023, we started on this road, but we should continue the conversation on the advantages and the dangers related to AI. And I should say that working with AI sometimes is more time consuming than doing it ourselves on our own. Some AI platforms lack transparency in the way they work. In conclusion, I would like to mention the following. We are familiar with the plus and minuses of AI, but if we want to integrate our work with it, we should also know our own good and sides and weaknesses, our cognitive processes, the fact that we think in an associative manner. We can start a game, and I ask you something, say like for instance cheese, and see how you react and what you associate immediately with the word I'm saying. Therefore, sometimes we often focus our attention into one direction, but we need a broader approach. However, we should say that AI is irreplaceable because it gives us several perspectives, not just one. It does not concentrate on a single point. If we want to use it productively, and if we are aware of our advantages and weaknesses, only then we shall be able to achieve a synergy in our work with the artificial intelligence, and that is on this point that is what I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kalinov. He made me think whether we would take the easy road towards the use of AI, and will we be able to achieve this symbiosis? Now, the floor is open for questions to Mr. Kalinov, to myself, questions about what we have just presented. Yes, go ahead. Thank you, Professor. Mr. Radev, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to be here. I hope this is the last time you're inviting me to a similar event, but I'm professionally tempted to speak. I am slightly more skeptical. Yes, I realize, I admit that AI creates content, that it's capable to synthesize, that I realize that it has applications in transport, defense, translation. Everything is true. But if it is so much better than ourselves, if it is better than Bach and Mozart, if it is better than Da Vinci and our best doctors, well, let's ask it, how do you treat cancer? And wait for the answer. They tell us that in our phones there is more computing capability than in the spaceships which landed on the moon. Well, obviously there is something in people which gives us an advantage. It can create a picture like the Sistine Chapel because it has learned it from somewhere, but can it create a new picture? I'm a bit skeptical. Maybe this is the last time that a new technological breakthrough is seen as a panacea that would cure all our problems. Well, you remember 5G, internet, and so on. I think that we need to use it, but not lose our ability for critical thinking, develop our knowledge. The calculator is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. It never makes mistakes, but we continue to teach our children how much is 1 + 1, 3 times 8. So I would like to provoke you to think. This is, I'm not denying everything that you have said, but I would like to hear what you think. Thank you, colleague, all the more so that as the only Bulgarian representative in the new military parliamentary committee, you are familiar with the new model of warfare, which we can witness 300 kilometers from the external borders of the EU. We now have drones with AI, with face recognition. They move autonomously. They make use of facial recognition, and they can launch a missile and destroy the target without without a need for a human. Ethically, this is unacceptable. especially when it comes to human life. When it comes to human life, the final decision should belong to a human, not to AI. In the European Parliament, we are debating whether facial recognition can be used massively. Some of my colleagues who believe that this should not be permitted. I myself think that we should be able to use facial recognition on the external borders of the EU, because a human cannot always identify a criminal, a terrorist. AI provides remarkable results here, even when attempts are made to change the face. This is about security. In the legal system, AI is becoming more and more important. It helps us process hundreds of similar cases, but we cannot allow AI to write the court decision, because we can see that AI makes mistakes. The subjective opinion of the judge can never be replaced. So the limits become wider and wider. The use of AI, as we can see, gives rise to many ethical problems. But it is here that we try to establish ethical standards and draw boundaries which cannot be crossed. And the European Union is a pioneer in this field. We can see that our competitors, the United States and China, do not have a good regulation, do not have good regulations in this area. I would also like to thank you for this question, and I will take it from Mr. Radev's comments about court decisions and whether AI can write a court decision. We need to ask the question here about justice and the temidas closed eyes. We cannot talk about justice and weighing of arguments. Yes, there are many skeptical people, and this is normal because it means there is critical thinking. Without critical thinking and accepting uncritically what AI does, we will allow AI to do everything that it wants to do, and this is unacceptable. Now, a short comment. A friend said that AI is like alcohol. It should be prohibited until a certain age. You need to have a certain solid foundation before you can actually make use of it. I would also like to give the floor to our other participants if they have anything to add. Okay. Thank you. I wanted to make a comment. You mentioned several times ethical issues in the context of the legal system. Congratulations to Mr. Radev and the European Parliament for dealing with the regulation of AI. Here, I would like to mention that the European Parliament started work on regulation of large platforms. As Professor Andreva said, it is not we who control them, they control us. Recently, I've started work on disinformation in social networks, and continuing what Professor Kalinov said, what AI can do. Every child can create a deep fake video and disseminate it on social networks. This will have horrible consequences for other children. in recent years, there was a case with a high-ranking official in the building of the European Parliament. Very often, the social platforms give priority to fake news because they generate more clicks and likes, which are monetized. So congratulations for the topic. I think that this dialogue should continue. Ethics are very important here, so congratulations. Thank you, Professor Dotze, for this comment. I'm very happy that we have had this discussion. I will now move on to the next panelist. When AI fails, real-life examples about unintended consequences. I'm very happy to give the floor to Joanna Bryson from the Berlin University. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm glad to give the English translators a break. They've been doing a fantastic job. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me. I get all the titles correct, but I was extremely excited, Professor Radev, by your speech, and I was hoping to get it in English, and then I remembered, of course, I could get it in Bulgarian, and that would be great. So this is an extremely timely comment, and I am going to move from what you've been hearing before much more into a political and security context, actually. AGI and superintelligence are narratives. I would call them American Anglo narratives instead of the other way around now. I have now both nationalities, but the British seem to be subjugating themselves entirely to the American tech narrative, and even now apparently maybe governance narrative. So I read recently that China has actually abandoned the entire AGI conversation, and that it's only the U.S. that is still has tech companies trying to shoot for that goal. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if every autocrat is sort of hoping that AI is going to somehow make them immortal, besides all the other things that they look for. But anyway, we'll see. I'll skip over. There's so many wonderful things that have been said before. I would really strongly recommend to you the UNDP's report, annual report this year on AI and supposedly sustainability. But it really talks about, I will say this, although AI has now, and did since the 1980s for us Anglo-Americans with chess, surpassed human abilities, what's happened is there's more human chess players and now more human Go players than there's ever been. And the graph in the UNDP report, which is mostly, of course, about development, and we're in a very serious situation right now, but it also shows this just explosion of capacity to play Go since people have been using AI to learn Go. So it really has improved human capacities to be able to use it. Okay, so I don't have much time. I want to come back to a critical thing. You've asked me to speak. It's actually very carefully phrased about when AI fails, the real-world examples. I want to be clear, though, about attribution. It is not the AI itself that fails, right? Or except like a bridge fails, right? We don't blame the bridge. And so a lot of the introductory conversation was about whether we can maintain control. And I want to make it very clear. It is our ethical obligation to retain control. And I loved the expression, at least as it was translated, sort of digital anarchy. That won't last very long, right? So areas that cannot keep this stuff under control wind up in this situation of entropy that maybe we've been experiencing and seeing in some parts of the world. So I think it's very important to understand that ethical systems and AI are both artifacts. They're both subject to our construction. And if we choose to attribute responsibility to AI itself, we lose the purchase, the foundation of justice, which is the limits of human life, right? That our natural proclivities to go see our families, right? We don't want to be in jail even for a year out of our 100 years we might have, right? So these are the kinds of things. We cannot use the justice system to improve AI. We improve AI through development and through maintaining better control than we have been, incidentally, over the people who develop the control. So regulating the industries that produce AI. Sorry, anything else I want to? Yeah, so I mean, and this is known. This is understood, though it needs to be reminded. It's in the UNESCO recommendation on the ethical use of AI that there can be no legal, purely AI legal personality, which we've all signed up to. And I love that in the current AI Act, one of the things that was introduced towards the end that was actually good was that if people deliver AI to the EU, if there's a product, it is mandatory that the people who would be operating that product can tell if it's operating correctly, if they can tell when it's an appropriate time to be using AI. Just as an aside at this point, one of the biggest concerns that we heard that the digital age is here and it won't go away. It can be turned off, right? So let's not forget, again, security. Okay, so where are we? Yeah. I think that's the end of that section. I'm going to do one last thing about the definitions, and then I'll get into the actual harms. So I was actually in Paris in February when Sam Altman said in front of the AI Action Summit, which I think was excellent, incidentally, that the term AGI no longer has any meaning. But there are a couple uses that we've had. One is omniscience. People seriously thought, I've been in rooms with 5-star American generals who seriously thought that if we had the right algorithm, suddenly we'd have omniscience. And they had thought that was deep learning. They realized they didn't have omniscience. This is about 2016 or so. And they said, what if China gets omniscience first, right? That was their big concern. It's not like that. It's another resource. It's another thing that takes time, space, and energy. Computation, AI, all intelligence is a form of computation. It takes energy. It's not something that can just, it isn't another arms race, okay? So omniscience isn't a problem. Superintelligence actually is a problem. So superintelligence, you have this issue of something that can learn to learn, and you get this exponential on exponential improvement. So that's absolutely a problem, and we call that problem sustainability. Since we've had artifacts that allow us to improve our intelligence 10,000 years ago, we have been exponentially increasing the number of people on this planet. We're hitting various planetary limits. We may keep increasing those a little bit with our innovations, but we need to realize that both from a security perspective and an economic perspective, this rate of the sort of Ponzi game that we've been playing for 10,000 years is over, and we need to reinvent our security in our economies, which is quite a big task. Okay, so yeah. All right. So let me go on to what you actually asked me to speak about. It was hard to think, given all the different harms we've seen. I actually asked on social media what people thought was the worst thing, and they were saying this new channel that shows women getting shot in the head. So sort of the deep fakes, which has enormous psychological harms on individuals. My own inclination, I think the worst harm we've seen was 7th of October. And that was because, for whatever reason, Israel chose to over-rely on a small number of cameras and a single algorithm for doing their security. So I know it's debated, and it should be debated, and maybe history will know exactly how that mistake came to be made, but it is definitely a mistake of the application of AI. And it was a predictable mistake. And I can prove this because that same meeting I just mentioned about the 5-star generals, the first part of that was online. And you can see me asking Eric Schmidt, the first time I ever heard somebody say, we don't want to waste the valuable eyes of the military. Isn't that a problem? Because you create a single point of failure for hackers to go after, and you eliminate whistleblowers, okay? It turns out a lot of people don't like whistleblowers. But anyway, I think it's, we've heard a little discussion about the changes in the military. I think I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. I met an extremely smart Dutch NATO official who was talking about we better not spend the European money that we're investing on the weapons of the 20th century. And one of the problems with drone warfare is that it is so inexpensive. So there's such massive innovation happening, but it will not only be wielded by nation states. And so we have to worry about subnational entities that are going to increase our insecurity. It is just a change. Another thing I worry a huge amount about, speaking of entropy, is market concentration. Okay, so this isn't a thing about AI. There's lots of AI, and I have a paper with Helena Malikova from the European Commission, Director General of Competition, showing that the EU absolutely is on par with China and the entire rest of the world, excepting America, in terms of the amount of patents being produced and defended in WIPO, and also in the market capitalization of all the companies holding those patents. But America is just off the rails with its market capitalization, and I think that's probably a bubble. But it could also be kind of a fudging thing. We'll get back to that. But the last time we had this high of inequality and this high of political polarization, and those things tend to go along with each other, was right before World War I. So when we get to the point where we allow individuals to have as much power as countries, we're almost definitionally at war. And so I very, very much worry about this. And AI, I think, is facilitating this, not only because some companies that we think of as AI companies, but I would argue are basically utilities. So they're under-regulated utilities that are providing new things like electricity, like water, like telephone, like rail. Now we have search. Now we have logistics, right? Amazon is basically a logistics company. Now we have political communication. And Twitter was amazing for that. The 95% of people that were elected had panels on it. They were talking to each other. They were talking to journalists. They were talking to diplomats. And we allowed it to be taken over by, not all of us, but we allowed it to be taken over by private hands. That actually, I'll skip ahead. One of my other harms is that Twitter became worse when we used AI recommenders on it. That's when it was opened to manipulation, right? So I think people, they said, oh, but we've democratized it. We've made it easier for people. They don't have to figure out exactly who to follow and you know, how much time they have and all these things. But that was how we built such an amazing communication network, was that we took time to optimize what we read and how much we said. And so when we make that, when we substitute AI, that we're offloading something. We made a lower quality product that was more accessible, and we opened it up to be weaponized. Okay, so and I think you could use that as a metaphor on some other things too. Anyway, so yeah, I worry about the marketization. I worry about A/B testing of political messages and advertising, right? So our incredible capacity to really hone messages, especially to those people who are affectively polarized, the people who are afraid and they're looking for an identity, and then people can figure out how to weaponize those people by getting them to propagate the messages of identity that are most extreme, but extreme in a useful way to the people who are doing the weaponization. So those people are very problematic. Another part, which I have seen in the main newspapers now, but I still don't think gets enough attention, is that it's not so easy to direct what everybody does through, despite what I just said, through social media, but it is easy to detect the people you can direct, right? It's really easy to find the needles in the haystack through the surveillance, and that has apparently been leveraged to find people that are willing to be saboteurs, right, and assassins. So this is something that, again, we sort of know, but I don't think we talk about as much as we should. All right. Oh, yeah. Well, this is almost going back towards what I said before and coming back to academia. There's a concern. We do see this massive improvement of the average students, like across the tail, from the poor students to almost all the students are better. The reason I'm saying almost all is we're also seeing, at least I've seen, and it's verified also in some science about this, is the reduction of the top, right? Because generative AI works by always, averaging, and even if we're moving towards the higher average, we're knocking out the exceptionally bright and interesting things, partly because that's where the hallucinations live too, right? So you're wandering around a space of data, and you don't want it to go out into the extremes too much, and then you wind up. So I think we've seen, except for the students who do it themselves and have the boldness to do it themselves, fewer of the strongest dissertations. But the other concern is that some people just are so over-dependent on it that they can't complete tests that are not easily done with generative AI. And there's some discussion, I don't know if it's true yet, this is still out there, that the increase in mental health issues that we've seen is not actually a consequence of COVID. It's rather a consequence of the release of ChatGPT. It's not that it hurts everybody. Most people seem to be fine with it, but if you have 2 or 3%, for example, the 1% who are paranoid schizophrenic have difficulty discriminating themselves from others, but it may be more than that. It may be more than that percentage. So there are some concerns there that are in the social level. So yeah, this comes back to, this is my last bad thing. I'm going to finish with a good thing because I don't want to be too depressing. The last bad thing is that I am very worried about, as I mentioned earlier, the overvaluation of the generative AI companies, that this might be masking the fact that the US stock market, except for those 5 companies, is going down. And an awful lot of the financial world expects, has been built up on the expectation that it can harness the ever-rising US economy. I think it's clear to everyone that, unfortunately, the US state is somewhat getting dismantled. But we are probably into for another 2008 kind of financial shock once that bubble bursts. And then finally, my positive thing is that one of the things I, again, think we all know, but we haven't paid enough attention to, was the fact that in 2022, it became evident we shouldn't be taking, maybe if it should have been before, but Germany had been harnessed to Russia, partly to try to keep Russia's interests centered with Europe. So we were taking so much of their energy, and then we had to stop. We were asked to stop, and we said we couldn't, and then we had to stop, right? The Nord Streams got blown up. And I don't think it's commented on enough that in only 6 months, 30% of our energy streams was replaced. And that was not just about building a few ports and putting some pipes around the place. Every company had to change its business process to deal with the new energy source. And the people of Germany reduced, the people and businesses together, reduced our energy consumption that year 20%. This is after decades of being told about polar bears. We were able to adjust our behavior a lot more than we had been before when we understood a clear enemy, right? So I think this is the promise, although again, slightly a peril of AI. We can change quickly now. We have incredible computational abilities, not only to translate, but to solve logistics, to make incredible changes. But those of you in governance know periods of rapid change can create lots of entropy too. But that is another problem for intelligence. So we have a lot of work to do, but I'm not completely pessimistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bryson, for the interesting perspective. Do we have any questions? I come from a Bulgarian municipality with 85,000, with a population of 85,000. I'm very happy to be here on the invitation of Mr. Radev. I think that these discussions, these debates, should move into the local communities because regulation is very important. But we need to work on the awareness of people about AI. I agree with Mr. Novakov. We cannot run against the wind. When the social media were developed, we had differing opinions about the pros and cons. Then came regulations, but nevertheless, social networks give rise to many problems that you raised. One way or another, humans will continue to use AI. They should not apply the test and the trial and error principle. I will give you some examples of people using AI. The first example was a mother who used AI to diagnose her child's condition and received advice about medication which led to an aggravation of the child's condition. Secondly, my political opponents who submit complaints to the local authorities, they make use of AI because it saves time. They don't need to read the legal network, the legal framework. Using AI, they can make a very focused and effective complaint. AI obviously has lots of pros and cons. It is up to us to regulate the use of AI. This is why I believe that the debates here in the European Parliament should move into the local communities, because we want people to be aware of how far they can benefit from AI and the risks it poses. Thank you very much. Yes, this was an example of real life. And of course, I will ask Professor Bryson to...
Thank you. I'll wait for your headphones. And I completely agree. I think, again, one of the things that the digital era, not only AI, has disrupted is our adequate focus on the local. And we cannot have security, we cannot have happiness, we cannot have babies if we don't meet each other. And so I absolutely agree that there needs to be a refocusing on the local, and I very much appreciate the examples you brought in. But I also think, of course, some of the other issues I mentioned are things that take nation states to coordinate. And indeed, the EU has done a phenomenal job of standing up to some of the other larger nations, as they say. Thank you.
Мисля, че е време вече да преминем към...
I think that it is time to move to the next panel, and we will have an opportunity for questions and answers. So, are we headed towards digital superintelligence? We have invited two excellent specialists. We will first listen to Mr. Cvetoslav Mitev from Digital Europe. Благодаря за думата, благодаря за възможността да говоря на английски. Заради организацията, която представлявам, много се радвам, че имам възможността да говоря пред такава аудитория. Много съм благодарен и на нашия домакин, професор Радев, за това, че организира тази задълбочена дискусия. Digital Europe е водеща съсловна организация, която представлява индустрии, които създават цифрова трансформация в цяла Европа. Digital Europe представлява 45 000 фирми в цяла Европа, повече от 100 корпорации и 41 национални професионални организации в различни сектори, така че ние сме гласът на бизнеса и разработчиците. Ние сме за регулаторна среда, която дава възможност на европейските фирми и граждани да се развиват в цифровата ера. Много е важно също така да имаме разумно ръководство. И въпросът е, вървим ли към цифрова свръхинтелигентност? Това е сериозен и спешен въпрос. Ще обясня защо. Перспективата за свръхинтелигентен изкуствен интелект изглежда въпрос на спекулация, но бързите темпове на развитието на изкуствения интелект изискват разумно управление, за да гарантираме това, че технологиите обслужват интересите на човечеството. Онова, с което разполагаме като законодателство в момента, без да навлизам в правни въпроси, мога да кажа, че изкуственият интелект вече навлиза в сектори като отбрана, енергетика, здравеопазване, финанси, транспорт и публична администрация. Виждаме това в Digital Europe. Имаме 25 работни групи от цяла Европа, които работят по теми, свързани с изкуствения интелект във всички тези толкова важни сектори. Изкуственият интелект продължава да се развива и темата очевидно е глобална. Европа трябва да се подготви, защото разполагаме с съзнанието за все по-мощните системи, които се появяват. Благоденствието на Европа, технологичният суверенитет зависи от способността на Европа да бъде водеща сила в областта на изкуствения интелект. Според нас това е абсолютно възможно. Но имаме нужда от решителни действия и резултати през следващите 1 до 3 години. Въпреки че сега нямаме свръхинтелигентност, виждаме, че това е нещо, което идва. Доказателствата и данните са тревожни. Между 2008 и 2021 година повече от 30% от европейските предприятия еднорози изнесаха своята дейност в САЩ. В момента Европа страда от това, че инвестициите не достигат инвестиции. Не достигат 800 милиарда. И в момента през последните 50 години в Европа не е създадена нито една фирма, която стойност е над 100 милиарда. Европа не би трябвало да изостава. Digital Europe смята, че Европа трябва да има водеща роля в цифровите иновации, а заедно с това да защитава ценности като доверие, суверенитет, приобщаваща цифрова трансформация. Сега да се върна към законодателството. Законодателният акт за изкуствения интелект, който наскоро влезе в сила, ние бяхме първите, които бяхме пионери за законодателство в тази област. Трябва също така да направим така, че ценностите са много важни, но да не забравяме, че той трябва да се прилага по съразмерен начин и да защитава глобалната конкурентоспособност. Сега, що се отнася до подготовката за следващото ниво, определено ние трябва да започнем да се готвим за следващия етап на свръхинтелигентност. Европа трябва да инвестира в модерни системи от следващото ниво. Разбира се, да се разработват етичните рамки и да се обръща внимание на международното сътрудничество. По отношение на глобалния фактор, изкуственият интелект е глобално предизвикателство и Европа трябва да се сътрудничи с партньори единомишленици. Виждаме също така, че в ООН още през лятото започнаха работа по нови механизми. Първият е независимият научен панел по изкуствения интелект и глобалния диалог за управлението на изкуствения интелект. Целта е да се постигне безопасно използване. Също така в Европа, Хоризонт Европа отпуска финансови средства за научни изследвания по механизми за безопасност за изкуствен общ интелект. В заключение, пътят към изкуствен общ интелект е неизбежен. Отговорът на Европа трябва да е бърз, координиран и активен. Европейския съюз трябва да се адаптира към по-бързи цикли на иновациите, да инвестира бързо, да намалява регулаторната тежест и разходите за провала. Ние трябва да оптимизираме законодателство в областта на изкуствения интелект, данните и киберпространството. Историята ни учи, че всяка нова технология е свързана с обещания и рискове. Електричеството доведе до революция в обществото, но имаше и рискове, пожари, инциденти, зависимост от инфраструктура, но бяха създадени стандарти за безопасност. Ядрената енергия осигурява огромни ползи, но и огромни опасности. Това изисква международен контрол и превентивност. Изкуственият интелект съчетава и двата елемента, като електричеството ще навлезе във всеки сектор, но като ядрената енергия и най-модерните форми са свързани с системен и добри екзистенциален риск. Ето защо изкуственият интелект трябва да постигне правилния баланс, да даде възможност за иновации, да гарантира безопасност и да изгражда международно сътрудничество. Технологиите не трябва да се забраняват, а да се насочват в правилната посока. Благодаря ви за тази възможност.
Благодарим на господин Мичев за интересния доклад, който представи, и ще дам възможност да чуем изказването и на Марк Бракел, преди да зададем въпроси. Заповядайте.
Thank you, and I also want to thank Mr. Radev for organizing this, because we've participated in discussions at the US Congress about superintelligence. I know the Politburo of China has talked about superintelligence, but I think this is the first time that a European institution, the Parliament, but I think also the Commission or Council, have talked about superintelligence, and I think it is critical, and so I think this is a really great initiative that you take in taking this step. I suppose the core question, which is on the slide as well, if we could go back to the first slide for a bit still, is, are we approaching intelligence that surpasses human capability across all domains, which is also what Mr. Radev laid out in his introduction. So what is superintelligence, if I could now have that slide? Superintelligence is AI systems that substantially exceed human performance in all cognitive tasks. So you may have seen Mark Zuckerberg from Meta recently talk about personal superintelligence, which he described as a great personal assistant that is on your phone, and if you want to call someone, you can use it. That, in my definition, is not superintelligence. I think that is Meta's sales pitch. I would say superintelligence means systems that exceed human performance in all cognitive tasks. I would say this matters a lot. Superintelligence presents serious risks to European strategic autonomy, and I think it requires immediate action. So if we turn to the current level of AI capabilities, can you raise a hand if you used ChatGPT last week? It's about half the room, I would say. So those of you are familiar that ChatGPT can reason, can solve problems, can search the internet for you, produce code if you're so inclined, and generate voice or images or videos. So that's something AI can do. And as you see on the slide, in July, DeepMind and OpenAI both claimed that they had won the International Mathematical Olympiad with a gold medal using their AI systems. So I think that is an indication of how powerful and how good AI has become today. And these capabilities are really impressive. Most people wouldn't have believed it if you had described this 10 years ago, and even some of the experts in the field thought the Mathematical Olympiad was years away. They aren't, however, superintelligence, because they cannot do everything a human can, and the Admiral, I think, showed very clearly what AI cannot do. AI-powered robots often stumble and fall, and we're not all driving self-driving cars yet, which also is one of the frontiers that has not yet been breached. So will we get from the current level of AI capabilities to superintelligence? Can I tell you when? Could you go back? Yeah, I'll tell you when to go to the next slide. I think if nothing changes, then yes. From our natural environment, it seems that superintelligence is possible. Frogs are less intelligent than cats. Cats are in turn less intelligent than humans. And there's no law of physics that says that human intelligence is somehow the upper limit of intelligence. We can therefore expect that a system can be created that exceeds human intelligence across all domains. Indeed, the development of superintelligence is not only possible, but also actively being pursued by some of the most powerful actors on the planet. Companies like OpenAI and Google DeepMind in the United States and Alibaba in China have publicly stated that they seek to develop superintelligence. If I could now have the next slide. So we see this was this new slogan from January saying that OpenAI would turn its attention to superintelligence, and they expect to spend $115 billion US, mostly on data centers, between this year and 2029 on developing superintelligence. This is a mind-boggling sum. It is roughly equivalent to the size of the Bulgarian economy last year, for reference. So if we do nothing to intervene, when can we expect superintelligence to be developed? Now, obviously, predicting this future is really hard. Only a couple of years ago, the president of the Future of Life Institute, Max Tegmark, predicted that manual labor would be replaced by AI-powered robots long before AI would be able to generate art. Now, he was incredibly wrong about this. Could we see the next slide? So you see here, this is my boss, Max Tegmark, and he has this analogy where you see the mountains and the lake, and his prediction was that slowly the water level would rise in the way that AI would develop. And you see, if it's hard to sort of see, but the top mountain on the left says the word art, and he thought that art would be the last to fall, and chess, as you can see, has already been submerged, as is the game of Go, as the professor indicated earlier. So it shows that making these predictions is difficult, and we are often wrong. Similarly, in 1933, the famous physicist Ernest Rutherford gave this speech in London where he said atomic energy can never be productively used. And the next day, a Hungarian physicist read this in the newspaper, Szilard, and he invented the nuclear chain reaction because he was so angry and upset with what Ernest Rutherford had said. So that also shows that sometimes progress can go a lot faster than we think. So my point is, please take all predictions with lots of grains of salt and be prepared for both faster and slower than expected progress. If I could have the next slide, please. With all these caveats, there is an expert prediction platform that brings together people who forecast all kinds of events, whether the Federal Reserve puts up the interest rates, whether Russia will invade Estonia, and over time they select the very best people at doing predictions and forecasting, and that community currently estimates the first general AI system that can do everything a human can by 2033. Another way to understand the trajectory we're on is to consider the projections by the research team at METER. And could I have the next slide? So here on this graph, on the left, you see the time it takes a human to complete something, right? So it takes you about 15 seconds to answer a question, or about 12 minutes, 10 minutes to find a fact on the internet. And on the sort of lower axis, you see the models and when they were released, AI systems when they were released. And what METER, which is this research organization in the United States, observes is that every 7 months, the time that an AI system takes to perform a task is doubling, which means that in 14 months' time, we'll be looking at AI systems that complete tasks that take about 2 hours, hour and a half. Then in sort of 21 months, we'll be looking at tasks that take about 4 hours, and then very quickly we approach the 8-hour working day. So that is another way to look at how capabilities might be emerging. So then, should we just let this happen? And I've heard the speaker to my left say it is somewhat inevitable, and I would argue no. I think there are significant risks that humanity might lose control to superintelligence if we have no safeguards and no guardrails. The founder of the AI field, Alan Turing, in the 1950s, already predicted that if AI development continues without guardrails, we can expect the machines to take control. Indeed, the UK government led the development of the International AI Safety Report that was published earlier this year. And led by the world's most cited computer scientist, Joshua Bengio, this report clearly sets out the risk of control loss by superintelligence. And for control risk to materialize, AI systems need to have capabilities that they don't currently have, or but they might not need all of them for the risks to materialize. Examples of things that AI systems can't yet do is operate completely autonomously in the world, self-improve their own systems, or create copies of themselves, so-called self-replication. But I want to stress loss of control is not just something recognized in this academic report, the International AI Safety Report, but also by many in the industry. Could I have the next slide? So this is a statement that came out 2 years ago, which says that mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war. And this was signed by the leading AI researchers and also by the CEOs of the leading companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google DeepMind. And whilst it's difficult to predict how exactly we may lose control to superintelligence, I think the analogy with social media, hi Commissioner, it provides a useful example of how AI systems can pursue goals we do not anticipate. Meta programmers, when they were sitting in San Francisco and seeking to maximize the time we all collectively spend on Instagram or Facebook, never really thought about the impact on Brazil or the impact on Myanmar. But still, the government buildings in Brazil were stormed. Ethnic violence broke out in Myanmar because of how they had programmed the algorithm. And I think that shows that sometimes we cannot really predict how our algorithms will affect society. And the algorithms powering social media are really quite dumb. Whereas with AI, we are looking at much more sophisticated systems and the impact could be significantly larger. So what should the EU do? Could we go to the next slide? So I'd have three recommendations for the European Commission and Parliament, so super glad that the Commissioner is with us. I think it's really important that we beef up the European AI Office. There should be about 40 people in that safety unit of the office by the end of the year. The United Kingdom, in its AI Safety Institute, has 200 people working on the same issue. I feel, as a European, we are significantly larger than the UK. They have left us, and we should at least be able to match their level, if not outdo them. We should also think about what we want from innovation and AI. I think Professor Bryson made a fair point that it looks like some companies in China have abandoned superintelligence and are pursuing useful applications of AI instead that they can monetize. And I think that is a very encouraging development, because just pumping data centers and compute into AI and hoping for the best is not a great strategy, hopefully commercially, but definitely not for society. And I think social media shows us that not all innovation is great innovation, and we should start to think about building AI that is tool AI that we can usefully use rather than just going with superintelligence. And then finally, I think the EU has a role to play in mustering an urgent diplomatic effort involving key powers. The EU has power in the AI value chain. ASML, which is in the Netherlands, the country where I'm from, is absolutely vital to produce the chips that are necessary for AI. They use lenses from Germany that can be produced nowhere else in the world, which gives the EU some leverage over AI and an ability to convene both China and the Americans to talk about guardrails. And I think a really good way to do that is to look at the analogy of the Financial Action Task Force, which is a body that came together very quickly and without much bureaucracy. Ultimately, we've acted before to deal with really grave risks to humanity. Human cloning today is not being taken up by the Chinese, not by the Americans, and not by us. We don't edit the genes of humans and make modifications to babies' DNA because no one thinks that's acceptable. And similarly, I think we should have internationally recognized limits that we can agree to with the Americans and the Chinese on superintelligence. Because I think Mr. Radev made a really great point that pursuing superintelligence is a bit like trying to build the Tower of Babel. And that's something that came with great risks at the time and is worth addressing today. Thank you very much.
Да благодарим на господин Бракел за интересния.
Thank you, Mr. Brackel, for this interesting look into the future. And I now have the pleasure to give the floor to Mrs. Katerina Zakharieva, European Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation. She will talk about AI and research. Good afternoon. I will start in Bulgarian and I will then continue into English. I would like to thank Mr. Radev. Thank you, Emil, for this very important topic you have chosen. It is a very engaging topic, I would say. Recently, increasingly, debates, conferences, strategies and legislation on AI are center stage. And it seems that there are two extreme opinions. On the one hand, we accept AI without limits, without regulation. The other extreme is concerns and fear about what will happen, rejecting developments, and this means losing out on what AI can do to improve our lives. I think that the European road we have chosen can provide both. On the one hand, we can be ambitious leaders in AI, and on the other hand, be responsible and cautious, being aware that AI provides unlimited boundless opportunities. When I talk to scholars and scientists, which happens all the time, be it those who use AI to make faster progress in their research, or researchers who work on AI, I can hear that new discoveries, new developments happen in AI all the time. Now, this gives rise to many questions for us as legislators. That is, how to regulate AI without choking research. We need to help researchers to use AI in their research. And I think that what you are doing here and what Emil has done, yes, I use his name because we've known each other for many years. Debates like this one will assist us in the European Commission and the European Parliament.
We did have R&I days, and I can imagine that a lot of panelists and topics were linked with an AI. And what this shows is a strong demand from the scientists and the participants, private sector as well, for the EU leadership in AI, in science. And there is also a strong business case, I would say, for AI. This year, European venture capital could reach nearly 50 billion euro. European startups like 11 Labs and Mistral are attracting record investment. We also know that risk exists. Disinformation, overdependence. Artificial intelligence depends on quality data, talent, and computing, but also on human judgment. We must steer its development without fearing it, to accelerate discoveries and create business opportunities, all while ensuring it serves our societies and our European way of life. This is what Europe is already doing in many respects. We were a first mover on AI policy. The predictability of our regulatory system is a great asset. It gives investors certainty, and most of all, it keeps our citizens safe. This will always be our number one priority, keep our citizens safe. At the same time, we must ensure regulation does not hold back innovation. Research exemption in the AI Act do this already. And we will continue listening, adapting, and improving our approach where needed. As Europe, we are also doubling down on infrastructure funding and uptake. Earlier this month, I inaugurated with Chancellor Friedrich Merz Jupiter, Europe's most powerful supercomputer. It is fourth fastest in the world, but is also the most sustainable in the world, showing we can be powerful without forgetting about our planet. Jupiter and our EU-funded supercomputers provide state-of-the-art capacity for our researchers, innovators, and industry, all enabled by European cooperation and support. Second, funding. Our AI Continent initiative is mobilizing 150 billion euro of public and private resources focusing on our strengths: manufacturing, engineering, and healthcare. At the same time, Horizon Europe committed 8 billion euro to AI research and innovation specifically, building language diverse large models, but also addressing risks like cyber violence and deepfake. And this is having a real impact. Most of you know Bulgaria's InSight Institute in Europe. It was founded by Professor Vechev, a grantee of our European Research Council. It is becoming a unique AI hub. Recently, one of its PhD students, Anna Maria Halacheva, was featured in Forbes 30 Under 30s list for her work on robotics. And InSight just secured 90 million euro of EU funding to build an AI factory. This will allow more talent to be trained, strengthening our competitiveness. Which brings me to my final point, uptake. I mentioned the business case for AI. There is also a strong science case. Last year, Demis Hassabis won the Nobel Prize for solving the protein folding problem with AI. In material science, AI could drive patent filings up by almost 40%. Artificial intelligence is already enabling discoveries. We must help unleash its full potential. This is why we are preparing an AI in science strategy that we'll present in October, in the beginning of October. Member states backed it in May, and I look forward to working with the European Parliament towards its success and implementation. We developed it with the scientific community. Our consultations highlighted some clear needs. First is combining excellence with trust. Second is broadening resource access. And third, investing in talent. This is what we will do. Our flagship, which will be announced with this strategy, will be RISE. This means the Resource for AI Science in Europe. It will pool national and industry efforts to support advanced models, training programs, and excellence networks. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Emil, the excitement about AI is real. Europe has what it takes to lead: top talent, regulatory clarity, and an increasing support. By remaining responsible and raising our ambition, we can steer the AI revolution. How we do? It's the European way. Trust, but also investing in talent and give the chance to our talented young people to develop their ideas, to scale their ideas, and to stay in Europe. Thanks so much for your attention. Благодаря ви за вниманието. Няколко думи за стратегията, която...
A few words about the strategy I mentioned. It is expected to be announced by the college at the beginning of October. It will be in a package with another strategy on applied AI, so to say, PIC. What we are seeking to achieve with the two strategies is to cultivate the potential and create the best possible conditions for AI in science, but also AI science. This is our motto. We will try to achieve this by attracting talent, financial resources, and computational power. The aim is to improve coordination and cooperation between member states, researchers, and business. This will happen with RISE, as I mentioned. I'm sure that Many of you have taken part in the consultations and the meetings we organized before the strategy was prepared. The aim, of course, was to meet the expectations of the researchers and the innovators. Thank you very much to the participants and to Emil for this conference.
I would like to thank Ekaterina Zakharieva for this inspired word. Now you have the floor for questions. Excuse me, but I have to go to join another committee and present the strategies there. I'm sorry that I was here so briefly.
Заповядайте.
Quite different in other ways. The thing that Mark Brackel and I had in common was this thread about the absolute importance that that there is human control, and how do we weave that. I'm not sure about the sort of the I don't. Okay, let me just go through here. First of all, you mentioned the numbers from I think it was 2017 or something to 2022, that there was these unicorns all being purchased. I saw numbers for 2023, and I haven't seen them since then, that there's actually more people, AI talent, moving from the US to the EU than the other direction. So I'd be curious about the more recent numbers there. But the whole AI control narrative is, I think, a US industry narrative. It's focusing on the wrong thing. It isn't, the problem is the companies not being adequately regulated, that the US backed off of its own antitrust law and went to a national champion law, and exactly what the US had previously said in 1945 when they forced Germany and Japan to go with antitrust has happened. Right? It isn't a single company that's taken over, but it's this disruptive oligarchy that is creating entropy there. Fortunately, the U.S. GDP had been going up quite reliably for a long time. The world has been going faster. We are succeeding in the liberal goal of creating lots of opportunity. So I think the rest of us can get together and handle these problems. The GDPR, and there were several things said by several members of my committee, sorry to criticize, but when the GDPR came in, I actually happened to be working for Google. Not working for them, they weren't paying me. I was working with them on their AI policy, voluntarily for some reason. I don't know why I did that. But anyway, I was there quite frequently in London, and they were saying, oh, we're going to pull out of the EU as soon as the GDPR comes in. I was like, yeah, right. You're going to walk away from this market, right? But a few months later, the same person came up to me and said, you know, the GDPR is great. It's a single API to 28 countries. And I'm like, yes, you know what the EU is? It's a trade bloc. You know what they like to do? Trade, right? The GDPR was designed to make it more easy to do work, to do business here. And I just had a master's student, a brilliant master's student at Hertie School, look to see what the costs of the GDPR were to German. We have very good records of German small and medium-sized enterprises. So we diff and diff study from GDPR when it started. The costs are negative. They made money, okay? So yes, there is a cost if you have to do this new compliance, but the benefit, it looks like the benefit wasn't actually increased markets, it was just reduced costs of other parts of compliance, right? So these things, that hasn't been published yet, but we put it out because of the debates that are happening right now online. So you can find it. It's Vai Vo, Vietnamese name. Her dissertation and all her data and all the way that all her code for analysis is all online, and we've had it checked out by other economists. So I want to come back onto, so AI already exceeds what we do in every way, right? I mean, in different pieces. I mean, books exceed our memory, right? We have to go through this continuum, the calculator thing that was already mentioned here. The one thing, though, that AI will never exceed is being exactly human. And this is what it comes back to the justice, right? Unless we did clone humans, unless we have cloning, we won't have something with exact same kinds of motivations as we have. And that's why the core of our process, and AI, it's an artifact, it is our process. The core of it has to be maintaining human control. So I really do see this as a question of geoeconomics and not about a particular technological switch that's going to happen. It really is about how are we going to regulate the transnational utilities that are these new, the platform processes, which is, as I said, not the majority of AI, but it's the stuff that's causing the greatest disruptions right now. So that's the kind of thing. And I think the EU, I think it's a global problem, but our experience of harmonizing and accumulating power through harmonizing markets is something that we now need to think about. How do we extend that? How do we replace the WTO with a kind of treaty organization that can that doesn't have the kind of veto players that we've been seeing before, both here and in the Security Council? But I think we can leverage our work to get on top of this problem. Thanks.
Благодарим на професор.
I'd like to thank Professor Dreysen for her contribution. Are there any questions from the room? Yes, you have the floor. Thank you. I would like to ask the following. There is a competition across the world concerning AI, but mankind is faced with the same challenge. I'm sure that all of you know Professor Bryson, Brackhill, Mr. Mitev. I think they are aware that there should be a cooperation with Europe and with China and with other entities. And is that possible, and how can it be achieved? That is my first question. Secondly, EU introduces strict regulations. Thank God we have metal bottles which can be unscrewed and their caps taken away. In this sphere, strict regulations will also always be behind the development. There is no way of them to go ahead of the development of AI. Can this paradigm of the legislation of the European Union, can it be changed so that it tries to regulate everything? We, in Eastern Europe, in Bulgaria, for instance, have an experience in this. 35 years ago, the state tried to regulate everything, and it ended in disaster. Therefore, we should think about this approach. Let us give an opportunity of our panelists to reply. I'll start from the back, from the end towards the beginning. As far as regulation is concerned, during this mandate, this European Commission has postulated the requirement for reducing the regulation in the omnibus package. 28 regulation will be cut down. This will save money for the business, will reduce administrative burden. And this is already a process which is ongoing. We are discussing this in the European Parliament. These are not just intentions. This is a very specific, very concrete legislative approach, and I hope that next year work on the omnibus package will be concluded. As far as cooperating with countries such as China, we are witnessing an extremely competitive environment in which it would be very difficult to achieve any mutual approach. Every country, both the USA and China, try to attract leading experts in the field, and we should be very careful in adopting regulations so that the European Union can remain a place where, without over-regulating, AI can develop. We are aware that we are lagging behind in many aspects. We see how much is being invested in the USA and elsewhere. 50 billion, someone mentioned, will be invested in the development of AI. This is, however, not enough. Legislation and regulation is important, but this can also be impede further development. A balance should be found.
Maybe just to add, 2 years ago, we had no Artificial Intelligence Act, but we also had no European Google and no European OpenAI. So I think regulation, we're in a parliament, so naturally we talk about rules, but I think that maybe our problem is elsewhere, in access to money, notably, where I think it's much easier to get access to money if you're an American startup than if you're a European startup. And in bankruptcy laws, for example, where often if you go bankrupt in a European country, you're stuck for ages, whereas in America, 2 weeks later, they found a new company. So I think that there's things that I think we can do to promote innovation that have very little to do with the AI Act, which I think, as the Commissioner said, exempts all science, it exempts all military applications, and it has a list of things where it applies to and everything else goes. So I don't think it is the most strict rules that you can think of. I think there are other problems that we have that we should look at that maybe aren't the sort of minimal safety regulations that the AI Act provides.
Заповядайте за последни изказвания.
Thank you. Well, I do agree with Associate Professor Radev with everything said. Indeed, the race is on. We call it race because practically China and US, they are in a race with Europe. And we see that. And in terms of collaboration, of course, it's necessary, it's important, but it's hard to be achieved. And what I meant in my speech is that we shouldn't be, as Europe, the only ones stepping out of this race, which is global, due to fear or misunderstanding of technology. This is the message. In terms of simplification of legislation, we are working on it as Digital Europe, along with Commission and all the institutions and Parliament, to practically achieve it. Because as other speakers and a speaker on my right mentioned, there is a lot of legislation, indeed, and it came out late. Investment is needed for sure. That was also part of my speech. But we also need to really clarify the current legislation. It's a young one, the AI Act, because, for example, it covers smart refrigerators being a threat. So such things need to be worked out during the implementation phase. And we're going to do it, I believe, through these omnibuses and everything coming. And in terms of speed, that was mentioned, the speed of AI, I just wanted to bring in this argument that quantum is coming. We're having Quantum Act coming on the way. This will rapidly increase the speed of AI, the quantum technologies.
Благодаря ви за изказването. Да дам думата на господин Радев, за да приключим. Времето ни ограничава.
I will give the floor to Mr. Radev so that we can conclude in time. Very interesting discussion. I thank all the participants in the forum. I hope that this dialogue will continue, even in other formats, because we heard many valuable expert positions and directions for next steps. When we speak about superintelligent systems that can accelerate human work many times over, perform multiple tasks simultaneously and significantly enhance the capabilities of natural intelligence, we are all aware that this is an immense potential. Let us work to ensure progress, security, and prosperity for all. I wish you further fruitful work, and until we meet again, thank you. I would like to thank everyone for the active participation.
Maybe this